Welcome, one and all, to GameTales, a show where we talk about a lot of things over the course of an hour or so, and today's topic is Dungeons and Dragons again, as we continue our adventure, our D&D extravaganza. So, Steven, from the channel Steven Nonsense, where did we leave off?
Good morning, afternoon, Unicom. Didn't use your actual names time. And our viewers/listeners, welcome back to part 2 of what I fear is actually gonna be a multi-part episode, because I don't think we're gonna finish talking about the this one.
Yeah, I'm curious about the story behind the picture you sent me with quick cocaine, but I don't think we'll get to it in this episode. We'll see.
We probably might not. I can start with it right now.
Okay.
If you're
Go
that
with it.
interested.
Go with it.
I'm gonna preface it, obviously. One of the awesome things that comes from D&D, from playing D&D, is the stories.
Oh yeah.
Great stories about fictional stuff that happens to you, basically, which is not something that you can say about any other medium of entertainment or mode of escapism. Beep. That's something a little bit of a foreshadowing there for people who actually watch a lot of this, a lot of us, basically. So going back to it, a great thing is you will create bonds with the people at the table you're playing with, or through the internet, obviously, through shared events, through shared emotions, shared funny things, shared trauma, maybe in some cases. But it's general, depending on what you play and how you approach it. It's general shared fucked up funny things that happen. So the story about the quick cocaine thing. And now I remember, actually. So last episode I said that we bought that ship. We hadn't. We actually killed the crew. This is how that happened. So this is during one of the games I did in the. I can't remember all of the details, but we get to this ship. We're on the deck. No one on the deck. We know that some sort of bad group, bad guy, bad something is on the ship, and we need to either talk to them or get something from them. It's a fetch quest, nothing special. But I always play spellcaster, because playing spellcasters in D&D is a little difficult, because you have to keep track of spell slots. There's no mana in D&D, at least not in 3.5. And as I said, my friends at the table, they kind of found it hard enough to play rangers and fighters and shit. So I was like, these fuckers need someone to deal magic damage, so I will be the spellcaster, which is fine. I enjoy playing spellcasters. I generally play sorcerers because I'm not big into the wizardly. And I'm going to tell you, I have a later story about a battle sorcerer I created one. Cool stuff. Anyway, but this isn't it. I had a basic sorcerer, and the other guys were a ranger, a cleric. We generally had a cleric, and I think a fighter or something like that. Can't exactly, don't remind. Like, yeah, a fighter, because he sucked at balance. Yeah, the balance is this story. But we're getting ready. We're on the ship. No one there, and we see a light in the what would be the quarters, where there's a door. Generally in movies, captain's quarter something, or they go, or where you go below deck, but not using a ladder. There was an actual door, and there's ladder. And I'm like, okay, let's ambush these fuckers. Let's attract them on the deck. And one, you go on the left, you go on the right, you go up. One of us stands here, so we can basically just crossfire. Something bad will happen to them. And they're like, cool, fine. So I went up above my sorcerer went above the door, just because I was squishy, and the other guys were like this on the side. And we're like, let's make some noise and attract the fuckers on the deck. So I don't know, we bang some stuff together, and then we wait. And this is how the DM describes it. He's like, the door cracks open a bit and then shuts immediately afterwards. And then you hear like a rustle on the inside. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? And then it's like quiet for a while. And I'm like, okay, fuck it. I'm just gonna set fire to their door then. And once I say that, a bunch of goblins just burst out of the door and start attacking us. And that's when the discussion started. Like, what the fuck were they doing after they creaked open the door and then they burst out fighting us? And we were briefing off of it, and at a certain point someone said, I think they were doing cocaine to have the energy to fight us. So so that's when the idea was, the goblin sees, shuts the door, and it's like, quick, cocaine. And from that moment on, the quick cocaine became a joke that we would use both in the games and outside the games as well. Whenever there was like no time to do something, and you know what would help us to do this 30-minute thing in 5 minutes?
Cocaine.
Cocaine. So that's where the quick cocaine thing comes from. Now you know.
The more you know. Oh.
We thought the goblins were high on cocaine
Probably were.
to try to fight us. Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about role playing games, about tabletops. You get these stories. That's something you can't really do from some video games here, because the stories depend on a level of freedom that the creativity of the GM, of the open nature of the rule set, of the way the game is. It's a thing that you cannot find in any other medium. This is it's sort of like theater, like improvised theater, with the possibility of failing even if you didn't really want to, because of the dice rolls.
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and I think also like improvisational comedy.
Yeah,
But yeah, you're right, because you're improvising the story, but you're also improvising events.
yeah. You have to react to
And
the consequences of a dice roll.
sometimes to, yeah, which, dice, the dice roll in general, I like um the metaphorical aspect of it. It's meant to basically represent random chance.
Mm-hmm.
That's why in the D20 system, there is a 5% chance that when you try to do something, you may unexpectedly, one, brilliantly succeed,
Mm-hmm.
or critically fail, also called a botch. Which, the longer you live, the more you understand that that's legit, kind of tracks, kind of
Yep.
works like that. But the issue I have with dice systems, and especially the D&D system, and don't get me wrong, I love the D20 system. I love the dice. I love the shapes. I love how they look. I love what they represent. I love what they represent so much that I have them tattooed on my forearm. This is a full set of D20 dice. That's the D20.
I have a 3D version.
Yes, but
I'm
commitment, motherfucker.
yeah.
Um, so I loved it, but that doesn't mean that I am not aware of, or it doesn't mean that I don't critique it either, or that I think it's perfect, because it's not. Because what I do have a problem with, and it's not necessarily the system, but how people play with it, is people tend to consider the dice rolls in themselves as them doing something that cannot be modified, that cannot be influenced by outside forces.
Mhm.
And I do not agree with that. As far as I'm concerned, the GM or DM is God. He or she makes the rules, makes any rules. If they consider that something in the book ruins the story or ruins the character development, then I believe they have the power and should ignore it. I'm not talking about widespread, mechanical things. I'm talking about the more subtle things, such as alignment issues and alignment discussion, and the fact that people generally think that paladins can only be lawful stupid. You can play a paladin without the alignment isn't alignments are more of a guideline. They're more of an idea of how the character should act in a given circumstance. They're not set in stone, and they shouldn't be set in stone. But some people play them as such, and some people tend to use this when they're assholes. When the person is an asshole, they tend to want to play chaotic neutral,
Yeah.
which I do not allow at my table. I don't. Chaotic neutral is you being an asshole, and if you want to be an asshole, try being an asshole in real life. Otherwise, at the table, I want to play with heroes. I'm not even interested in playing with villains, although that can be interesting. But no, at my table, we are heroes. We are something that we might not be able to be in real life. We can be stronger, we can be faster, we can be smarter, we can do all of these wonderful things. And you want to be an asshole? It's not enough to be an asshole in real life. You want to be an asshole in a fantasy life as well. So, no, chaotic neutral I do not allow people to be chaotic neutral. They can be. I had once a lawful evil paladin,
Like
and I
a
allowed it
blackguard.
because we discussed how he should play the lawful evil, and the idea was he's basically Lex Luthor,
Hmm.
and that's the general approach. And also, we saved his ass from dying, and due to the god he was following, loyalty was a big thing for him. So he was loyal to the party for having saved him. So even though he was an evil paladin, he would heal the party because we had already saved his ass from death. So I had that once, but chaotic neutral is a no go as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, sure, you can argue with me in the comments. You do what you want to do in your game, and I'll do what I want to do in my game. Because again, you can and should house rule tabletop systems. Like for instance, since we started as video gamers and looking in 3.5, it has a fuck ton of rules, man. Like some of them you will never use. Who the fuck uses bull rush? Who? How? In what circumstance will you use bull rush?
One single situation, like in 3 or 4 years, one.
Yeah, usually, I mean, it's great to have the option. Wonderful, but usually the easiest and best thing is to hit the thing with whatever the fuck you're holding. That's the quickest conflict resolution if it comes to combat possible. We can talk about grappling as well, but I have an entire video about a grappling system made by someone who is a super fan, and he also a student of HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts, which, by the way, considerably less sword fighting than you think. It was a lot of crushing damage and grappling going on. But besides that, so no, the idea is that when we started playing, I started playing with a only a nucleus of rules, basic things: attack, heal, pair, not pair, attack, pair, movement, that sort of stuff. And as we advanced in the game, I would patch in other parts of the game, things like poison effects, that sort of stuff. I would patch them in. Have a story about poison effects also. Um, but the idea, generally, idea was to get us steadily to that level where we could basically play the entire game, but get accustomed to it, not throw everything at them because again, it's kind of difficult to keep track of everything. So that's the quick cocaine story. And another anecdote and another in joke with my group is I'll have a taste. Now, this is the guy whom I didn't allow to be chaotic neutral. They were in a I think it was like a kobold cave, and they reach the kitchen, and I describe that something's boiling on the fire and it smells it's disgusting, it's horrible. The guy I didn't allow to be chaotic neutral, he's like, oh, I'll have a taste. I'm like, um so the soup is looking very nasty. It's like boiling with, it looks like it has eyes in it. And so I go through this. I'm doing my best to illustrate the fact that if they eat from the soup, something bad will happen. So I do this 3 times. He's like, I'll have a taste. I'm like, okay, fucker, roll Constitution. He was like, what the fuck were you expecting? What do you think would happen if I tried like 3 times? I didn't want you to get poisoned. You're poisoned, motherfucker. And he got like some nasty sort of kobold fever stuff thing. But yeah, that's a second one of those stories with I'll have a taste. Yeah, but he did learn after that. So yeah, again, you don't DMing and GMing. You shouldn't. It's not your job to kill your party.
Yeah, you just have to let them do it on their own.
Yeah, it's not your job to kill your party. It's not you're not there in a what's the word? You are not their enemy. They are not your enemy. Basically, what you should do is both the DM and the party should collaborate in telling a story, creating a narrative, improvising solutions to problems that you set up as a DM, and then you improvising problems, just dovetailing off of paranoia they say. Because sometimes, yeah, the paranoia of the players is something wonderful.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you can, if you can harness the paranoia, that's that's the perfect level of DMing.
Like,
You have some stuff
the DM
prepared.
had like me and half the party thinking we are gonna turn into zombies because we fought some zombies and we got bit, and we started feeling like kind of like sick after that, and thought we were gonna go to start chewing brains out. But no, it turned out we actually just had a bit of a cold because we took a skinny dip in a pond in a dungeon.
Which that's just a great idea also.
Yeah. That was really
Yeah,
funny.
so the player exploiting player paranoia is the bomb. But yeah, and I was talking about rolling dice basically. What I do have a problem with, since they came mostly from video games, and I don't think this is an issue with most other, but I'm sure it is an issue, is someone saying, oh, I'm gonna bluff the guard, and they roll the dice. And to which I respond is, okay, bluff the guard. I don't like the idea of just rolling the dice.
Yeah, it was just having a skill check, and then you have to do something.
Yes, especially when it comes to bluffing, motherfucker, you better be relatively, depending on how much you roll and the guard's AC and the type of shit that comes out of your mouth, I will then decide whether or not the guard is bluffed, regardless of your roll. And it's the same. And this was one of my ways of basically enforcing roleplay. Because again, this is that's the part of role-playing tabletop games that I like the most. Sure, fighting monsters is cool, items is cool. I kind of like the role play, but I like the creating stories, because I at my base I do think of myself as a storyteller. So that's what I like to do, and that's what I don't like about the D20 system, is that I'm pretty sure some people will exclusively rely on the skill checks without doing something, without being part of it. They just consider it's like they use an ability. They click.
Yeah, I think some of the later versions of D&D sort of really leaned on that. The fourth one was always compared to World of Warcraft, I think. You tried to be a bit more something like that. In the sessions that we played, we sometimes went like entire sessions without throwing a single dice because we were just doing stupid stuff. And one of the first ones we, well, I say we, the rest of the party, not me, they found a drunk like at a tavern. Poor guy. They just gave him a drink, and then kind of kidnapped him, just palled around with him around town while he was unconscious. They fed him soap. Well, technically, he ate the soap by himself because he was so drunk he thought it was candy. And we later ran into him again on a boat. And at that point, I thought myself, okay, my character then was a bard. He was kind of he wasn't really super duper clever, but he had like, he again, just like Norm, he was wise enough to know that he's not clever. He also got really bored and would wander around by himself and get in trouble, like running to a
Like
bunch of
some
zombies.
people tend to do.
Yeah. But on that night, I was, you know what? This is going to be a long boat ride, so I'm going to disguise myself as that guy we kidnapped once, because he was a master of disguise. His greatest disguise was that he looked really handsome, but he had a wig on. Like, if he needed to disguise himself, he just took off his hair, and suddenly he turned from Mark to Cram, secret agent. And
Okay.
nobody recognized him. He
It's like
disguised...
it's like the mirror universe where you just
Yeah.
Spock with a goatee and Spock without a goatee.
Yeah, he disguised
Okay.
himself as the guy we kidnapped and convinced him that he was in a dream, dreaming that he is talking to himself, and his other self is telling him that yes, he is the prophesied ruler of the North, that his people yearn for him to return to his birthlands, that he must go and venture forth into adventure and reclaim his heritage.
See, even if the bluff roll wasn't enough for that story, I would have botched it and said, "Okay, he believes you." Totally.
The bluff roll actually was good enough, or so I'm told. We never got to see the consequences of the of that action because about 2 years later we all died. We like in all the time we understood like the components that make D&D different from like a tabletop different from a video game, but we keep forgetting that one very important thing. You don't rest when there are enemies nearby. Like, even when there's a suspicion of enemies nearby, you do not rest.
No, it's
Because
like at least you
the enemies could be invisible next to you and stab you in your sleep.
at least you set up guards, but yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a anticlimactic ending, but it was a campaign that dragged on for a bit too long. I mean, we had a castle by that point. We actually died under it because there was a Naga under it.
Okay.
But
Like the Pillars of Eternity before Pillars of Eternity.
yeah, kind of like that. We came from really humble beginnings in that game. I mean, I think 2 or 3 of our characters you kept using bows because they were efficient at a distance. But one of them in particular, a character called Kalkin, he was a thief. He had the worst luck imaginable. He would roll a 1 so often that he would knock himself unconscious with his bow. Like when we were fighting a basilisk, he would shoot himself in the knee repeatedly. Like it came to the point where the DM said, "Your bow breaks," like because he would just keep shooting himself or
Was-
or his party members.
Maybe it was a cursed bow, you don't know.
Yeah, we suspect that maybe there was a god up there, like a mischievous god of like a Loki type character trickster that just loved
Or-
dicking around with him.
You know, as a dovetail out of that, if just the idea just came, that's how you get cursed items.
Yeah.
Someone is super unlucky with something, and that just transfers into the item. So that instead of breaking the bow, then the bow could just become cursed. If anyone else uses it, they would get minus to their rolls. For him, it's fine because he's the source of the curse. But it basically just spreads to anything he uses
Yeah,
for a long time.
like the jinxed trait from Fallout.
Kind of like that, yeah.
And
But that would be, and you could do like, once you're aware of this, I mean, if you become aware of this, you can have like a very interesting trade of, you can create like magical cursed items and maybe
Yeah.
sell them, or even better, make it so that your enemies get them
yeah,
for cheap. Hmm?
that
And again, this is the type of stuff that you can only do in a tabletop
yeah,
game.
because there are basically no limitations there.
Literally, I just came up with the idea, and if this were a game,
We could do it.
could have happened in the
We
game.
could do it.
There's literally nothing stopping you from doing all manner of crazy nonsense. On the other hand, sometimes the roles can be wonderfully random and wonderfully horrible, especially when it comes to physical aptitudes, in which role play doesn't really come into that. So for physical aptitudes, I'm more lenient with the rolls. One of the fighter, we were in some ice cavern, something, and fighting ice gorillas or some shit like that, snow gorillas. No, no.
Yetis.
That's a different adventure. No, in this adventure, we were in a frozen tower. We were in a tower in a land that got hit by a surprise freak winter. That was just it was a magically induced winter, basically.
Elsa came along.
We later find out why. But we get to this wizard's tower where we know everything started. And amongst the various creatures we find in, we find some ghost wolves or something like that. Basically, not ghost ice. Sorry about that. Because I was thinking of Ghost from Game of Thrones. Because wolf, no, sorry about that. One of their abilities was a freeze breath sort of ability, which would basically apply cold damage to you, but more importantly, would also create ice in a cone in front of them on the ground. So, what happens when you're a fighter who wears plate armor and has almost no points in balance? He failed balance checks 5 times consecutively. He failed 5 balance checks 5 times. One after the that's 5 turns, dude. For 5 turns, the fighter was on his ass. On ice. Ass ice. So on the other hand, it also the roles also allow you to allow for things to happen that if you were to A, read about them in a book, or B, watch them in a movie, you'd be like, come on, no, that's too much. It's incredibly unrealistic. It just pulls me out of the movie. I can suspend my disbelief only so much. But in D&D, you see the dice roll.
It
So
happens.
there is no dissonance happening then. Oh boy, and does it happen? So on the other hand, there's that as well. But when it comes to role playing stuff, yeah, I'm considerably more strict when about that. And even the system I've started working on years ago is basically based around role play more than role play. But about that probably in part 3 because we're not ending. This is gonna end with part 2
Yeah. We're gonna do several parts,
most likely.
guaranteed.
So there's where was I? Because I talked about dice and why I don't like D20 to a certain degree. What about you? What's your opinion on the dice? Also, we have to. Sorry, we didn't have dice when we started playing. None of us had D20 dice. We
It
played.
just
We had just that, and we generally found dice generators on the net, and that's what we used basically. Before again, I was lucky because this friend of ours was in the Netherlands, and I told him to bring us dice from the Netherlands, and he did. So we basically had dice considerably earlier than the rest of the people. But yeah, we didn't actually have physical dice for years. What about you?
well, I like
What's
my
your
dice.
opinion on the D20 basically system?
I I think the system could probably be streamlined so there's how should I put this? There's a lot of boring dice rolls involved in the game. Like we just miss by one, and your enemy misses by one, and then you miss again by one, and nothing happens for like half an hour because you keep missing each other.
That can happen, yes.
That just sort of drags everything down. It turns into a 3 hour session to a 5 hour one, and we never actually get to finish it. As we mostly play like 2 3 hour sessions. That's what we could afford in terms of time. That's why it took us like years to actually get to level 6. years. But I think it's a bit better implemented in D20 than it is in the storyteller system, the one that Vampire the Masquerade uses. Because after playing the initial Pathfinder campaign, we started to branch out into different other systems. One of my favorites was the storyteller one from Vampire the Masquerade. That is also based on like a lot of dice, like a lot of dice, and depending on what implementation of the rule set, you will have to roll for attack, roll for damage, roll for defense, roll for dodge, and it gets really, really, really boring to just keep rolling dice until you die. So we simplified that to just having one dice roll, which really made things a lot simpler because the storyteller system is it's in the name. It's geared even more heavily towards storytelling than D&D is. Combat is just something that happens sometimes. It's all mostly based on what you do, how you do it, and how you do it, how you present yourself, your character, everything you do.
That's what I want to make, but not that.
And
Not that particular system.
And the thing is, it still has combat in it, and it does allow you to do all sorts of stupid things. One of my favorite things is that we were sort of betrayed at one point in a campaign by an NPC. It turned out to be the villain all along, and said, "Aha! Now that I've got you." And he by this point he transformed into a monster because he had an amulet and said, "Oh yes, with the amulet I shall now rule the." And my character was a bit of a lunatic. He was a Malkavian. And he's paranoid, so the moment he starts, the guy starts saying, "Aha, I'm going to be," he pulls out his gun and shoots him in the face. And thing is,
never let villains monologue.
He was a really good shot and just blew off his head. Like that's the part that I sort of like about the storyteller system is that the crit is not based on you getting like a single good dice, or you have to get a bunch of dice rolls over a certain number, and depending on how many points you invest in your skills and what quality of weapons or items you use, you get more of those dice rolls, and a lot of them, like pretty much all of them, were I think 10 or more, and that Snarrigan just blew his head off. Like we were supposed to fight that guy for like minutes on end, like have a really epic battle, and it just blew his head off. They just love
like
that.
just like Spoonie's story about the thieves' world.
Oh yeah,
where one of the members throws a bottle of acid at
the
whatever's head, and he critically hits someone who could only have been critically hit.
Yeah.
In order to be hit. That does sound again. That does sound like something that tends to happen. Granted, in D&D, depends how you set up the villain.
Mm.
Yeah, generally, sometimes you might want to basically make a recurring villain.
Yeah, we had that for a bit with actually one of our party members that he mysteriously like joined us halfway through, and actually turned out to be a villain all along. We had an adversarial like connection with him. We tried to get him out of jail to get him to repent, but he started murdering people like on his way out of jail. Like he didn't even do like out of necessity. He just found a guard that was like asleep, and instead of just taking his keys, he slit his throat. It was it was really, really interesting to play with him, like in our party, because he was constantly trying to get us into trouble and get us killed, until the eventual final confrontation when him and a bunch of NPC thieves just attacked us, like in their lair. It was a really bad situation. Like we were almost wiped out, but the thing was, our ranger just got his second attack at that level, and thing is, our ranger was a bit of a sleeper hit, because when he started shooting, he had multi-shot or something like that, and point-blank shot. When he started shooting, he had his bow turned into a machine gun, basically. He murdered everybody. He took like the main boss, which wasn't our the other player, but the boss of the Thieves Guild. He took off like 90% of his HP in one attack move. Like with a bow. He hit him like 5 times in one attack move. And when the other player saw that, he just, okay, I'm going to run now. And he ran away.
there's that. I mean, it depends on how the dynamic was at table for that to have happened.
Well, playing over the internet, so it's there was room for mysterious dealings between him and the GM.
Okay. But otherwise, if you want to make a recurring villain, which kind of works well with my episodic approach to adventures, a good idea is to stat him or her way over what the cumulative party can and should be dealing with, and also give them minions. Because if you're trying to build like a sort of a relationship or something like that, you need to make sure they can survive critical hits
Yeah,
in
and
case they get to him. Because I did that for also, if you don't want your characters to kill and or impregnate everything in your world, just don't stat it.
yeah.
Don't stat the quest givers. Don't stat the tavern person, or don't stat. Don't stat if you don't want them to kill it, basically, because they will try.
Well, we tried to kill pretty much anything we could. Anything that we could get away with. Like we wouldn't go around and burn down orphanages or something, but we would do our best to dick with everybody that sort of felt like they were trying to slide us in any way. We were very vindictive heroes, very
I
petty,
guess.
very vindictive.
See, again, that's not exactly the type of atmosphere that I like to run in my adventures. Again, I like heroism. I like the more clear cut heroism. Yeah, they can do crazy shit when it happens, but there is very little to no sort of going off the path of not necessarily righteousness, but being a decent human being, not being an asshole.
We were trying to do the right thing by eventually getting to doing the right thing by fighting some evil, but there were like obstacles in our way. Like some at one point somebody got recruited to take an artifact from the dungeon we started, and we found the guy that took the artifact and gave him to some evil wizard. And we kept trying to get him to intimidate him to tell us, where's the wizard, who do you take it to? And he said, I don't know, leave me alone. So we went to his house and left a note at his door saying, well, like stuck with a dagger in the door with a note saying, "We know where you live. We're watching you. Come here and to this point and tell us what. But come to this point and we will leave you alone. Otherwise, you will be hearing from us again." So in the morning, the guy opens the door, closes it, looks at the note, shrugs, and leaves. And turns out we never actually asked the DM if the guy knows how to read. So he didn't know how to read. So we were trying to intimidate him with words, with like written words, and that didn't work. So
It does happen. Also, an interesting thing, and I'm curious how you approach it in your game. So I played with my colleagues, sorry, who are Romanian, but we speak a combination of Romanian and English, also known as Romglish. So most of what happened in the game, we kind of talked about it in English, especially when it came to skills, when it came to using stuff. But we would blend it. However, at a certain point, we came up with the idea, with the approach of basically speaking in Romanian. Romanian was common tongue, and English would be like a foreign language that the characters would know how to. Because some of them would know Dwarvish, some of them would know Elfish, some of them would know Draconic, so on. So that was the thing. Well, did you do something separate with that?
no, we only did it in Romanian, and the DM was very very adamant at using as much Romanian as possible. For example, we used to at one point we fought some Wolverines, and we didn't call them Wolverines, we called them Viezori, because that's what they were. Viezori.
No, it's Jderi.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a Viezori kind of situation, but still, that's what he calls them. And we always sort of stuck to the most basic language, but the idea of actually using a different language when you when talking like Draconian or Elvish or Dwarven or something, that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, we kind of discussed that to a certain point, and it was just we wouldn't necessarily keep track of it, but it was something we did because again, we spoke a lot in English as well.
I'm
So
curious, as a DM, when you were talking through the NPCs, did you use different accents and different voices?
yeah, I would try to, yeah, I would try to do that sometimes, but I would just go for the most stereotypical stuff possible. So, for instance, the tavern keeper was Scottish, like this, or all dwarves were Scottish, and that sort of stuff, or Irish. But yeah, I would try to do that. I would try to do, but not. I wouldn't really go that over the top, because I would tend to do more stuff with using tone of voice and describing how the NPC or character would
Mm.
act. I would go with more with that the more description-y side of things than the more voicey side of things. But yeah, no, that's something that can definitely add to the experience, not necessarily to the it's not necessarily relevant to the proceedings, but it can make the proceedings that much more immersive and or fun.
Our DM had the most killer old lady voice. He used it as much as he could, as often as he could. Every old we would just approach old woman NPC just to hear him talk like that,
Okay.
which made it like for a real treat that at one point the main baddies were three witches, and they all talk like in cackling tones like he made it superb, like absolutely magnificent old lady.
One big problem we had whilst learning how to play it was and I still it still annoys me to this day. Attacks of opportunity.
Oh.
So there's two major things that we had a lot of problems understanding how to properly use, and one of them I don't really think we really got to how to actually use it anyway. But whatever. So one of them was attacks of opportunity. Now we definitely we know how it works. It makes sense how it works. Now that it's kind of like one of those hindsight is 2020 things.
Mhm.
Once you know how something works, you're like, obviously, how would it work differently? But yeah, it took a while for us. It took like one or two sessions for us to understand that the tax of opportunity literally only happen when someone is in the square right next to you,
Mhm.
because we just had a lot of issues with attacks of opportunity, and I don't know if, I mean, it depends on the world, it depends on the setting, because in some circumstances generally they exist in most turn-based games. They do not exist in heroes, for instance, but they are present in stuff like expeditions, conquistador and viking,
Mhm.
and to a certain degree they kind of make sense from a realism point of view, but otherwise maybe it doesn't make sense in all situations. For instance, if someone was running past, technically speaking, you can you could attack of opportunity them when they run past you,
Yep.
but I think that shouldn't be a clear cut example. I think it should matter on the circumstance, because if you're already engaged in combat and then someone runs behind you and past you, not to stab you in the back or something, then that would mean that basically you're the fucking Flash,
Mhm.
because you can have a fight here, and then for like a fraction of a second you can turn 180 and hit that fucker in the background, and then turn 180 again and be ready for your turn. So in some circumstances, I don't think attacks of opportunity should exist. Basically, I see the idea. I see the idea of using them in the sense that someone is moving close to you and maybe that opens them up somehow to an attack. But I don't no, it's an iffy situation for me. And the second thing was turn undead. So it took us so much time to understand the calculations and the mechanics behind properly using turn undead that it almost made me not want to use zombies or skeletons in the game. Although I loved using zombies and skeletons. Um, and it's totally fine, despite what my video says about five low-level monsters to use, which you should definitely check out, besides zombies and skeletons. But I think everyone starts with zombies and skeletons, basically. So yeah, that took us a lot of time to understand. Like, how does the hit? What is a hit die? Is that the amount of HP they have? That the number of them? Is that a range of? Is that it was so difficult for us to actually understand how it worked. But then again, one advantage with zombies and skeletons is that the fire really likes them a lot. And one of the another this is a general D&D tip number 412. Fire is your friend. Always make sure, granted, you should always carry you need to carry oil for lamps and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that. But I always make sure for them for someone to carry a bunch of extra oil and fire making every member of the party should have the ability to make fire on themselves.
Yeah.
They
I have a
need
story about that once you're finished.
Also, that's a good idea if you go camping as well. Everyone who goes camping should be capable of building should have on them the things required to build a fire. You never know, but that's more so in D&D. Because yeah, you can use oil and the basicest of torches to basically it can help you a lot. It can also, if you're not a good thrower or whatever, but otherwise it can help with the things like zombies that don't move a lot and that cannot uh, uh, stop, drop, and roll. Basically, they can't put the fire out. So that's just extra damage happening to them constantly. Was it in one situation in a game? There was a trap there was a trap door in the floor that had a zombie, and we saw the trap door and we successfully disabled it. And then we saw the zombie, and then we were like, who's gonna we can and the ranger is like, well, I can shoot it with arrows. And I'm like, why waste the arrows? Look, 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 look. Throw a torch in, zombie barbecue. Free XP, basically. Your fire story?
So, about 3 months ago, we started a new campaign set in the Dungeon Crawl Classics sort of universe and rule system. The Dungeon Crawl Classic system is the one where we start off with 4 people. Most of them will die. Like they start off at level 0. They have only the most basic stats, an occupation, and a name, and maybe something in their inventory. If they're lucky, they'll have like a pair of scissors as a weapon. You're basically
Okay.
playing as NPCs drafted into an adventure. And you don't necessarily end up with the NPCs that you would want to become your player characters, but some of them are just really lucky for some reason and never really completely die. When you do get the drop to like 0 HP or at least like -5, as long as it doesn't exceed your I believe your endurance, you can still be brought to life if you roll a luck roll, and then like sacrifice 4 points of one of your statistics
Jeez.
forever. Like
Okay,
those,
yeah,
you
obviously.
do not get those back ever.
Yeah, sure.
And one of our players had a character that would die off in each session. He would come back. He would always come back. He would always succeed the rules perfectly and always come back. but he was at a point where his character was so horribly mangled that he would just like there's have you seen the really boring Hercules movie with The Rock?
No, I have not.
So there's a movie. It's kind of boring. It's a cliche after cliche. But there's one character that has seen his own death, and he knows that he will die at one point in the near future. And every time he sees something flying at him, like spears or arrows, he just goes, "Like,
Okay.
come at me." He's waiting
at
to
me,
die.
bro.
Yeah, that was basically what this character would do constantly. So at one point we were traveling through the woods and realized that oh my god, we didn't bring any food or water with us, did we? No, because it had been like almost a year since we played, and we kind of forgot that this is different. Like this isn't a video game. You need food. So a bunch of us started eating whatever we had on hand, and he remembered that some time ago we passed by a dead squirrel. So in the middle of the night, when we were at the edge of the woods and we were standing guard, he just went off into the darkness to find the squirrel. Now, had he woken my character up, I could have given them some not lanterns, the what you call them, the thing.
Torches?
No, candles. I could have
Okay.
given some candles because my character is a candle maker. We established that he makes candles with his elven earwax. Because he keeps making more of them from somehow. He always has some in his inventory. But
Sure.
but he also had a torch on me, and I was the only one that had a torch on me. He didn't-
Again, everyone should have torches.
yeah, I know.
they should.
We hadn't played for like a year, and we got this used to how things are actually worked. So he wanders around in the darkness, like in a meadow, like far away, and he eventually does find the squirrel or the raccoon, whatever it was, and he picks it up and looks at, maybe I shouldn't really eat this. I mean, it's not really all that. And suddenly he hears something around him. Suddenly hears something on this side as well. Suddenly hears a howl, and then he gets eaten by wolves in the darkness. And
Ooh.
and then more people go after him, and they come running back when they hear the wolves. And then one of them realizes, "Hey, does anybody have a torch?" And they ask him, "Yeah, I have one here." And they eventually do find what's left of them. Let's have another story with wolves, if I may. This was back in the Pathfinder campaign at the beginning with the cursed bow, of course. The curse was kind of contagious back then. Everybody was shooting themselves in the foot. I was one of the fortunate ones that never fumbled. Like in the first year of the campaign, never fumbled anything. I missed things a lot, but I never fumbled. And one of our thieves, also with the bow, while we were trying to rest, we got ambushed by some wolves. He shot himself in the foot, and because he was injured from a previous battle, he knocked himself unconscious. And because he was a halfling, the wolves kidnapped him. It's just,
They thought he was a child.
yeah, he just,
Were they doing all the like more shit?
he was small.
Yeah, what the wolves don't do that. They don't kidnap stuff.
I think they were just taking along to eat them later, because so taking him away from the party so they could
Like
eat
a
him in
snack.
peace.
He's like the happy meal, like the happy meal
They just-
equivalent of what it is.
Yeah, they just grabbed him and ran off with it, and we
Okay.
had to chase down the wolves to get him back. That was
That's the part of Bilbo story that's never talked about.
the part where he stabbed himself in the leg so hard he knocked himself unconscious and got kidnapped by wolves. You know, a lot of things
That
can
would've-
happen. Yeah,
Yeah, that what made that movie at least considerably better.
yeah. I mean, we
The book is fine. The movie is
Yeah,
shit.
in the book, we don't really know exactly what happened to him after he became unconscious. Just that he wakes up sometime. Maybe he did get kidnapped by some wolves. I mean, some wargs could have, tossed him around like a chew toy for a while. It could have happened.
We don't know. But so this system you're playing is complete. It's like it's meant to be that way. It's meant
Oh,
to
yeah.
be funny and very.
It's meant to be stupid. Like if when you cast a spell, you have a roll that you have to, like a dice roll. And if you fumble that roll, you can either lose the spell for a day, you can upset your patron god, or you can misfire. And misfires have their own, like, tables upon tables
Separate
upon
table.
tables upon
Yeah.
tables of things that happen. One of the worst things that can happen, well, the thing that will mostly happen is that you get corruption. Corruption means that you start to look like one of the crew of the whatchamacallit, the ship from Pirates of the Caribbean,
Dead man's
yeah,
tale
yeah,
stuff.
the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like Warhammer.
Yeah, kind of like that, like exactly like that. And one of our characters has, instead of a leg, he has a tentacle now, which he uses to intimidate people. The thing is that once a month he will always has to have to roll a dice to see what other part of him will become corrupted. It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of what part.
But can't you now spin that into a separate adventure to get a way to find a way of him like at least stopping the corruption from happening?
I think we may
Like
try that.
like magically stopping it from, because the a tentacle, depending on could be useful. It could be useful for
Yeah,
grappling stuff.
yeah,
Could be useful for like sticking to things. I mean, that could come in handy,
yeah.
but depending where it is. Also, so is it like a hand tentacle?
It's a foot tentacle.
Foot tentacle. So he has both hands, both arms.
Yeah,
That's fucking great because he could grapple an enemy with the tentacle,
mm-hmm.
and basically he would still be standing up because the enemy would be close up, and he can just wail on the enemy with with like dual wields, because at that distance he has the grapple on him also, and it's point blank.
Mm-hmm.
So I would use that as a means of like just destroying. Granted, in this system, can't really take damage from what I gather, but it could be an interesting could be a way of
Yeah,
just
it
using
does.
a disadvantage as an advantage.
It does enable some interesting things because currently he uses it as an intimidation tool, and it is very, very effective. Because when an average thief sees that you're pulling off your boot and reveal a tentacle, and then you wrap it around his neck, they sort of, oh yeah, I'm not gonna trouble you anymore. I'm not gonna crime anymore. Crime is bad. Crime is evil. I am
Yeah,
not gonna
that
crime.
I
Oh
imagine
god.
that can work like that, but I'm just saying maybe
Yeah.
it can have further functional
Yeah.
abilities.
Well,
But
and that's just when
so,
you get corruption. You can misfire spells so badly that they have like horrible effects.
of course,
I think some of them the higher level ones you kind of burn. Like if you try to cast I think a high level fireball or something, if you fumble it, you sort of burn everything like when a 1 kilometer radius around you. Like luckily I don't.
that's kind of powerful for a fireball, even for a fireball.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think it was actually a fireball. It was like a really high level spell. Currently, we only have like level 1 spells, and the worst I could do was by trying to cast flaming hands, I extinguished every flame in a room.
That's not that bad.
Yeah, it was actually
Although
not all that useful either because there were no
kind of
lights
the
in the
opposite
room.
of what you're going for,
Yeah,
but still, could be worse. Could be
yeah.
worse.
Oh god, I know it could be worse.
But going back to how to like a normal, a general system, a general D&D. Another thing that I suggested all members of the party did is so when you make a character, you can pick 2 traits at least, depending on your racial makeup. You might be able to add a bit to that, but not really. Generally, you get 2 traits, and I generally suggest that all of them take toughness,
Oh yeah, that's a
just
very
so
useful one.
just so that they have +3 HP. They start with +3 as well. That really helps to keep that really helps keeping them alive during the first
Hmm.
2 to 3 levels. I have to say that
Yeah.
3 HP can actually be can be quite crucial.
Yeah, in my first combat encounter in a Pathfinder, I had 4 HP, and I got hit in the face by an orc. Like round 1, orc, 4 damage to the face, bam, unconscious, right off the bat.
But the talk about traits or ability, I think these were traits. It brings me back to a line that we sometimes use is like, "Who takes improved initiative?" So I'm talking about a fan movie, an indie movie called The Gamers, colon, Darkness Rising, which is by far one of the best, if not the best, on-screen representation of what a D&D campaign is, both in real life as well as in the actual in-game world. Because in the movie, you also see how D&D seeps into their real life, which, trust me, when you're that deep into it, it will. Anything and everything will go through the filter of D&D in your head. Anything that happens, anything that you hear, it's like, oh shit, that's a skill roll.
Mm.
But the Darkness Rising, in case you haven't watched it and you are into D&D, I don't think it's possible that you haven't seen it yet. But in case you haven't, track it down.
It's on
It's
GOG, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's on my list of top five sword and sorcery movies to have in the background running. I would generally watch the movie running up to an adventure, to a session, just so that I would get pumped up and amused and whatnot. But it does such a great job at just illustrating the it illustrates a couple of the archetypes. Well, there's the ever um, ever disappointed GM or DM
Mm.
with his party's choices, who he builds this crazy cool campaign, and the players just they just do dumb shit all the time. And then there's the really there's the guy who just decides to play completely off script, and he plays a female wild mage.
That's
um
chaotic neutral and
yeah,
burns everything.
obviously. Yeah, so there's a lot of it's not the game they're playing is very make believe, in the sense that there's a bunch of abilities that don't exist. But the again, just as I was saying with the gaming aspect, and also with the movies aspect, which is, it's a separate discussion that I might have to have on my channel, but it's a crucial one. Something doesn't necessarily have to make sense in the long term if it helps story or character development,
Like backstabbing a book because it has a spine.
for one. Or the fact that the fighter had like three abilities, or four, allowing them to like hit I don't know how many times, because they made a bunch of they made some shit up basically, or
Hmm.
added some shit up for the fight. Yeah, it didn't that might not happen in real life, which is what some people, when they talk about movies, they call plot holes. But it does make sense for the character and for the story, that because they're trying to make a point
Hmm.
about that particular situation. And that's something that happens with movies. A lot of people tend to, a lot of internet reviewers, such as myself mostly, tend to overly focus on plot holes. Now, not saying you should ignore all of them. Some circumstances, they're really egregious and they have to be talked about, and at least you have to take them into consideration. But in some circumstances, one has to understand that from the storyteller's perspective, and this is where D&D comes into play as well. From the storyteller's perspective, story and character development come first, rather than the world making
Hmm.
sense from our real world perspective. And that's something that happens with DMs. A lot of DMs will purposefully botch roles in order for the story to progress in a way that is awesome. Not necessarily. just for the story to progress. But if someone decides to do something crazy, but it has the potential to result in awesomeness and behind the screen, and that's why DMs should roll some things behind the screen. But if the behind the screen they fail, then that's when your inner storyteller, your that's when rule zero comes into play, where the DM is God, and he says, "Oh, I'll allow it," like Senor Chang, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can spur on, because, and this is important, and I want to stress this: if one of your characters, if one of your the persons at the table, you're trying to build a story together, and if one of them comes up with something really crazy, really cool, really innovative, really something that you didn't think of, basically, if they come up with a solution that you hadn't already thought of, and generally we tend to think about 3 to 5 solutions whenever we make something, but if they come up with something different, then it's your duty to ignore what the dice say and allow for the story to, and allow for you to see what can happen further, because that will not only make the story great for the players, it will also make it great for you, and it will make and it will, you'll be the only one who knows, unless you want to tell them later that you botched that roll just to see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. I suggest you don't. I suggest you maybe wait years to say that, because that can that can and will lead to things that you literally couldn't have thought of. Like, for instance, we had a situation when they went to the house of the mayor to get like a quest. I just built the house. It was just meant they go into the office, the mayor gives them the quest, and they go blah. But no, of course, the fucker I told couldn't be in the chaotic neutral, had to do some stupid shit. So basically he let the rest of the group go into the mayor and told, and his like second in command, whatever the fuck. And he was kind of I think he was a rogue, yeah, or a thief, depending. And he just went through the house. It was a manor type. And I'm like, holy fuck, these fuckers can't even take a proper fucking quest queue. Anyway, so then I had to on the fly create a situation for him. So bam, there's guards running after him. Bam, there's a hallway. Bam, there's a door, and then there's like a tower. He goes up the tower, locks the door behind him when he gets, and he finds he's in like a bell tower, because this was the mayor's mansion. He was on a hill, and he
Mm-hmm.
also had the bell to announce in case of danger, so people can go up the hill. This was like a swampy type of area, so if there was a flooding, the people needed to know so that they would go for higher ground. So he's there, and the guards don't exactly know where he is, or don't they didn't really get a good look at him. They didn't make the connection that he was with us. So I'm like, okay, fucker, let's see what you're gonna do. And they were talking. I generally tend to allow them to talk outside of character as well when it comes to crazy shit like this. Normally I wouldn't. I make there has to be a differentiation between character knowledge and player knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
um and this goes into the way in which I would like these sort of games to be played. But yeah, that's a bit more nuts and bolts. Anyway, the idea is, I asked them, okay, fuck, what do you have on you? And this is where the having everything you, because I insisted on them always having a means to make fire, oil, torch, some provisions and water, and rope.
Mm-hmm.
Always have rope. Generally, I would also suggest a 10-foot pole, but rope is more important than 10-foot pole as far as I'm concerned. Although 10-foot poles are good. So I'm like, well, you have the rope, and he's like, I could. You have the rope and you have the oil. So he does the following: he throws a rope he ties the rope so that he could go down it. And as he goes down the rope, he puts oil on it. Once he's safely down, he sets fire to the rope, so the rope burns. So there's no sign of him ever being there. So that's how we solved an issue. That's how we made it so that the town guards wouldn't be antagonized by our group, basically. And again, this is the type of stuff that I just literally the idea was for them to go to the mayor, talk to the mayor, get the quest, go go and do the quest. But again, the decision from the asshole, we managed to save the situation and make it into something that could have been considerably worse. Later on, his character and my character were the only ones to survive from what happened later on. But do we have to take a break?
Yeah, I think we're gonna take a break as we are already at the 1 hour mark again.
Okie dokie. What do you have anything for this week?
I have no clue. We are in the very, very distant past right now. No,
Distant future.
we are in the past. The show is in the future, but we are
The show is
speaking to
the
you
future.
from the
Yeah,
past.
that's true.
Who knows? Maybe the apocalypse happened already, and we're seeing this
Yes,
video
but
as a mutant overlord.
that would just suck because I know I'm pretty sure Athelstar is gonna watch this, all of them, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna wanna to see this. I think we should do this every episode and just leave a cliffhanger for the next part. I do have a plan though, and this week, while Stephen, just like you said, we are in the distant past. The show is in the future. Your present viewers. At about this time, I think I'm flying back to Denmark from Romania because that's where I'm gonna go for my holiday. Fortunately, I won't be getting to see Unicum live because we live in quite different parts of the country. So whether I'm in Romania or in Denmark, it's pretty much the same thing. But even though that might happen, that will happen. Hopefully, that will happen. All right. This week on my channel, I am covering Robothorium. Yeah, which is turn-based, cyberpunky combat thing with a bit of story here and there. Lots of buffs and debuffs. Not bad. Could be better. Check it out. Check it out. It's an interesting play. It's an interesting game, sort of. It depends on what. It's kind of like Darkest Dungeon, basically. That's the overall thing, but doesn't look as good. But on the other hand, fuck Darkest Dungeon.
As for my channel, I don't know exactly what will there be on Gaming HD. We'll see. I mean, it's a few channel. Maybe Apex Legends seems to be what people are playing these days, and
What's that?
Apex Legends. It's the new battle royale craze.
Oh, Apex! The internet. I thought a Pixel Agents.
Oh,
That's what I heard. That's
Pixel
what I heard.
Agents. Somebody
Could
probably
be
made
something.
that. Yeah. Oh, probably that. Probably.
If you have, is it free or what?
Yeah, it's free.
Okay. Yeah.
It's based on Titanfall, but without the movement system or the Titans. So it's like
It's just Fall. It's just Fall.
Yeah,
There.
it's the boring parts of Titanfall. But will they be good enough? Who knows?
I don't know. I didn't play. I had played Titanfall.
Oh,
And I'm not really interested in Apex Legends, but I did see it's crazy popular. And it was kind of like a surprise.
Yeah, they just announced it out of nowhere. There were rumors that they were going to be announcing it, and then bam, announced, released. It's already a big hit. The thing is, I really liked Titanfall. Never bought it because the first one cost $60 and it was multiplayer only. The second one, I'm waiting for it to go down in price a bit more, and I'm going to be playing it. But I really love the movement in it, the action. It's just a very, very enjoyable multiplayer game with NPCs around there that you can smoosh. And now we have a battle royale version of it without without the giant robots and the wall running.
We'll probably talk about it later on, but it is interesting. It's an interesting method because in today's market where we have juggernauts, we have Fortnite and the PUBGs and the Battlefield, this idea of just like surprise, granted, you have to have serious financial backing. You have to be a big name, basically.
Yeah.
And the game has to work.
Yeah, the thing about this is, it's Electronic Arts published this game. They bought Respawn like 2 years ago or something, and they have consistently sabotaged every Titanfall game. The first one was a multiplayer-only game that they released for full price. Very few people bought that. The second one they released between Battlefield 1, like the big, highly expected World War I FPS, multiplayer FPS, and Call of Duty, I think Black Ops something. The other long-awaited, very, very people wanted to play it so badly. In between was this Titanfall 2 that didn't really get as much attention as it should have. And it was just murdered, crushed, killed there. And now they came out of nowhere. Like, no marketing hype before it. No budget to promote it. They just, out of nowhere. There it is. Apex Legends. It's there.
Yeah, but from what I hear, it works. There's no server fuck-ups.
Yeah, and next week they're like in a week or two they're releasing Anthem, so they're sabotaging it again. But this time, because this one's is free, by the fact that it's good, it managed.
They're sabotaging Anthem, I think.
Yeah, I think it sort of reversed it. Like the game was so liked by everybody, apart from EA, of course, that it's gonna sabotage Anthem.
It's gonna be interesting to watch. But, thank you everyone for watching.
Yep.
We hope you really enjoyed it. Do not know because we're going off into part 3.
Yeah. So goodbye.